Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So today I want to talk about Phil Town. I'm working my way through his book, Payback Time. It's a really great book. And in this book, he shares that his most important metric for screening companies is growth of book value. Okay. And book value really represents what's available to equity holders, right? The equity of the business. How has the equity changed over time? So, what I did today is I ran a screen in ValueLine, which I have access to because I have a library membership at Fairfax County Library for $27 per year. So I get access to ValueLine through that library, which I made a video about a couple weeks ago. But anyway, so I ran a screen for 10-year book value growth, 5-year book value growth, and 1-year book value growth. And I set the 10-year growth minimum at 10%. I set the 5-year growth rate minimum at 15%. I wanted it to be growing a little bit faster in the last 5 years than the 10-year overall growth rate. And I didn't set any values for the last year of book value growth because it's been a challenging year for a lot of companies. I didn't want to necessarily penalize companies for losing book value in the last year. So what I've done here is I've sorted these by market cap. So you got the smallest companies at the top. Okay, I figure the smaller companies probably get, well, I know they get less attention from analysts, from institutional investors. So there's potentially more likelihood in the smaller market cap companies for inefficiencies in pricing, more of a discrepancy between price and value. So I've sorted by market cap. And then what I did is I looked up both the operating income of the last 12 months and the enterprise value in Morningstar. And when you divide operating income by enterprise value, you get a metric known as earnings yield. Okay, so that's what is the last year of earnings as compared to what you would have to pay to buy the whole business. That's essentially what enterprise value represents. So, it's not just the equity in the business, it's also the debt holders, it factors in the cash. So it's much more of a whole business approach than just looking at the equity at the stock. So when I came across a negative operating income from the last 12 months, that was a no-go because there's no earnings yield. The company isn't earning any money in the last 12 months, which, I want I want a business that I buy into to be earning money in the last year. So those I didn't even put an earnings yield figure for because there is no earnings yield. It doesn't make sense to have a negative operating income. So the first one here, FTLF, I believe this is FitLife, a biotech company. We've got $2 million in operating income from the last 12 months divided by an enterprise value of 14 million. That gives a 14.3% earnings yield. That is really compelling, okay? And you can see here the last year book value growth is a little wonky for some reason. But clearly the 5-year book value growth rate is over 15%, and the 10-year, very impressive at 34%. Another column I added was insider holdings. So insider holdings is something I've been paying more and more attention to. I think it's even more important when you're looking at small cap to micro cap companies. It can be a really good indication that the interests of management are aligned with the interests of shareholders. If you have, a high equity stake for the management, right? They have skin in the game in terms of stock ownership. So I've really been paying attention to insider holdings, and that was really brought to my attention in the book 100 Baggers by Chris Meyer. Highly recommend checking that out. So anyway, this first one, Fit Life, great earnings yield, awesome book value growth numbers, significant insider holdings. But when you have a 16 million market cap company, it's not that hard to have high insider holdings, but it's great to see. The one thing I noticed about this, there's a 6% annual dilution, which means the number of shares outstanding have been growing at about 6% a year for the last 9 or 10 years. So that's not something I love to see when my stake in the pie of this company is being diluted, right? The earnings have to be split up into more and more pieces as more shares are issued. So that trend I don't love for this company, but still might be worth looking at with such a high earnings yield. So I'm going to dive into that one a little bit. The next one on the list that I was impressed by in terms of earnings yield is AMNF, a food processing company. You see 8 million of operating income in the last 12 months, 61 million in enterprise value for a 13% earnings yield. You see all of the numbers for book value growth are over 15%, which is awesome. Pretty respectable insider holding percentage at 30%. And the shares have been consistent. They haven't been issuing more shares. They haven't been buying back shares. It's just, it's pretty much the same shares outstanding over the last, 8 years or so. So that is also compelling. And then finally, there's this HNNA Financial Services Company. 13 million in operating income last 12 months, 61 million enterprise value, and this is a whopping earnings yield here. Essentially what this means is, if the company earns the same amount for the next 5 years, if I bought the business, I'd have earned my money back. Okay, it takes 5 years to earn your money back at an earnings yield like this. Pretty solid numbers here for book value growth. Very high insider ownership percentage, and check this out, 1.4% annual buybacks. So the company is buying back shares. They're retiring shares at about 1.4% per year, which is great. It means, if I had bought in 10 years ago with one share, over time, my piece of the pie is 1.4% larger each year by not doing anything. But I don't have to buy back. I don't have to buy more stock in order to grow my share of the pie because they're retiring shares over time. So that's fantastic. I love to see companies buying back their own shares. So that one's especially worth looking into. Now I don't usually look at financial services companies, but I'm probably going to take a quick glance at the annual reports for all three of these companies, FTLF, AMNF, and HNNA. So, I learned about this, this core metric for Fill Town and Payback Time. So, when I learn something new in a book like this, I like to put it into practice and run a screen, see what comes out of the screen. So it's cool that I found 3 pretty small companies here that I'm gonna take a little dive into based on kind of these initial results. So I will keep you guys posted on those. And as I work through this book, Payback Time by Phil Town, I'm going to be making more videos about that and doing a video summary of the whole book at some point soon. But hopefully you guys got something out of this. It's, I'm an engineer by training, so it's really fun to kind of do screens, pull numbers like this, and geek out over the numbers. So yeah, diving into these three companies, and I'll let you guys know if I'm compelled further by any of them. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this. I will see you in the next video. Take care.